So thank you very much to Deedham and our keynote there on what keeps chief data officers awake at night. I'd now like us to move on to what makes a scalable data management analytics platform or infrastructure. So over the past 2 years, Microsoft have been working very closely with small, large, mediums, and large enterprises on really defining and understanding the different pain points that enterprises have today. And through a course of kind of research, piloting, working with those particular customers, we've been able to come up with what a scalable data management analytics system should look like. Throughout our research and our working with different customers, we wanted to understand the challenges that a lot of the technical teams have today in really enabling the business to derive data from their organization's data. Some of the key things that really we'd like to kind of call out are complexity. So working with complex data architectures that don't scale. That thing whereby you start off with a data architecture, 3 years down the line, you have to come back and you have to reiterate, there you cannot bolt components on, you cannot scale. Also complex architectures really change staffing needs. Whereas 10 years ago, you maybe only needed a software engineering team. Today in the cloud, you need a bunch of new teams, including a DevOps team, a product team, a data team, infrastructure, etc. Also, there's uncertainty. So as you look at technical innovation and it continues to advance, you need to continue to involve your platform. Whatever you do in the cloud adoption framework, it's often difficult to determine the best steps for scaling and optimizing your environment. There's nothing prescribed, or there wasn't anything prescribed that you could actually go to. Skilling. So when we talked to a number of customers, we found that customers are still using their on-premise knowledge, and the skill sets that they use today, unfortunately, don't translate to the cloud. Only a small majority. And there's significant differences in how we operate on-prem, where you have full control versus kind of the cloud-based services. Also, you can think of on-prem that you have effectively a data center, you have racks, and you can buy one of a type, whereas in cloud, you can have multiple of that type without having to worry about the amount of rack space you've got. So we need to do something on filling that skilling gap to adapt to better ways and newer ways of working in the cloud. And then equally, when we look at kind of data architectures and data analytics projects, these are projects that typically take a long time. And there was a lot of impression that it can take several months to deploy a new solution and even longer to prove its value. And that lack of real-time trusted data to make decisions can also slow down the process even more. So with that in mind, the team got together and we functioned to really try to come through and develop and optimize a data strategy. And what we have come up with today is something called the Azure Cloud Scale Analytics Scenario. It is a scalable, repeatable framework for building a modern data platform to meet your unique business needs. Now, we could say, okay, we started from scratch, but quite honestly, that is not the best way to start off. What we did, we drew from the best of our existing assets with extensive experience from our field teams, our partners, from you, our customers, and real world engagements to provide kind of this prescriptive guidance, resources, because we just don't want it to be a document, and you'll hear more about that from Marvin and Hamoud later on in the session, through to best practices to align your people, processes, and technology to develop and implement. We based it upon top of the cloud adoption framework. So not only do we build upon top of all the best practices, but we actually take our Microsoft's cloud adoption framework and build upon top so that we've got a strategy, plan, ready, adopt, govern, manage, secure, and organize phases for your modern data platform. We want reference architectures. We appreciate that there's going to be maybe a 70-30 split. So 70% is prescribed, 30% is how you interpret it or how your business works. And the scenario is designed to be modular. The reference architectures will allow you to start with a small footprint and grow over time whilst adapting the scenario to your use cases. We want you to also be able to take code that allows you to deploy this. And Marvin and Hamoud will be introducing our deployment templates, which allow repeatable templates, which are accelerators to the 5 core infrastructure and resource deployments. And then finally, if we look over the top of this, there's a couple of other things we need to consider is assessments. So we need to understand the business strategy. Do you have a business strategy? Do you understand where you are going? And inside those kind of assessments, what skilling do you have? What is the skilling gaps that you need to build up? And equally, you're probably not going to want to deploy the biggest, largest SKU size of deployment size of XYZ service. You want to be able to always optimize your data analytics workloads with 5 key optimize principles, which we're going to kind of go into a little bit further on. But that's what we would call a well-architected framework. Then next thing down, we also have looked consistently at our customers and gone, where is the challenge that we see on increasing and accelerating our time to value? If we look today, a crucial component of your data strategy and platform implementation is federating data ownership across your organization. So unlike traditional centralized data ownership, IT owns under the traditional centralized data ownership, IT owns all of the data and services. You get complex kind of centralized architecture, which really impedes some of that agility. The line of businesses typically rely on the IT to meet their data analytics leads. And then on top of that, the lines of business sometimes go outside of central IT, as we saw in countless kind of customer conversations, to create that shadow IT. So when we looked at how do we solve this and how do we take this forward, we needed to look a bit more at that federated ownership model. And each line of business in this scenario owns its own data-driven projects. But before you say, well, how do I control that? Well, actually, IT teams implement and maintain the common data governance and management, as well as shared analytics services for consistent and improved data processing and quality. But however, lines of businesses can effectively access and analyze their data to make it better, and also build out with more timely decisions to build on that business value. This sounds great, I suspect. However, let's take a bit of a step back, because I mentioned earlier on that before you build out of a cloud scale analytics, I want us to take a step back and explain about how the cloud adoption framework works and how it brings to fore something called Azure landing zones. Now, the cloud adoption framework has been used by thousands of Azure deployments to enable strategy, platform governance, migrations, operational models, and management baselines. It is also the reason that we have built cloud scale analytics on top as an addition to this framework. Now, before you can build out a cloud scale analytics platform, you need to have the water, the gas, the electricity there. And this is really, if we take the analogy of how city utilities work, such as they have to have the water, gas, and electricity accessible before new houses are constructed. In this context, we're talking about the network, we're talking about the identity management, the policies, the management, and monitoring. And think of these as the utility services that are going to be ready to help streamline the application deployment business. And from a skilling point of view, the data engineer can no longer just be really data engineers. I'm not asking them to be absolute everything and understand everything, but there is now in this world, in the cloud world, the requirement perhaps to broaden the scope to understand just basics around cloud and infrastructure. So with that, let me just take that step back and go into Azure landing zones, just so that we can get a baseline on these Azure landing zones. Now, Azure's landing zones the cloud adoption framework is an architectural approach and reference implementation that enables effective constructions and operationalization of landing zones on Azure. It does it at scale, and it's aligned with the Azure roadmap. The Azure architecture provides kind of prescriptive guidance coupled with Azure best practices, and that is what we are doing here. And if I click on this picture here, we're going straight into a technical detail of an architecture diagram, but I want to just try and bring this together. For many organizations, it's the destination that you go to on your cloud adoption framework. It's mature, it's a scaled out targeted architecture to help organizations operate. It also has a wealth of lessons learned. And you, at the moment, I suspect you're saying, well, where does data fit into this? Where am I going to put my data? So let me just try and drill through this. The Azure landing zone conceptual architectures shouldn't really be considered as abstraction, right? It's a consistent experience for both AppOps and DevOps, and it provides a unified and consistent control plane across all of these. Now, let us zoom in, as I say, because I appreciate this is going to be a very small graphic on your screen at this moment in time. But if we look at this here, we start at the top of thinking about the policies that we wish to apply to our platform. So in this scenario, we have the ability to say, okay, we're going to have some management group and subscription organization, and we are going to divide our setup into subscriptions, these Azure landing zone subscriptions, which are going to be platform subscriptions and landing zone subscriptions. Let me first deal with the actual platform subscriptions. There is no requirement, or should be no need, for you to have to set up multiple connectivity subscriptions. So you'll see down here, in this one down here, we have a connectivity subscription, but that is set up once. And that is set up so that then anytime we add any form of workload, be that an application or an analytics workload, and we deploy what we would call a landing zone subscription, it will automatically appear to the connectivity subscription. And at the same time, we can then go through further on this, and it allows us then to get this automatic subscription across here. We also have at the same time this management subscription. So we have this available to us here. This management subscription is all about where do we send our log analytics, where do we send our monitoring. And then finally, at the top here, we have our identity subscription. We finally, sorry, too many finallys. The where do we sit in this, and where does Cloud Scale Analytics actually sit in this scenario as a scenario? Well, we're going to be creating these landing zones. We're going to be creating some very special type of landing zones that are for our data workloads and also for our data governance as well. And what do they look like? Well, they look a little bit like this. So for our guidance, we've talked about how Azure landing zones are kind of a strategic target. Well, we actually have Azure data management and data landing zones, which are designed to be the same foundational principles as any Azure landing zone. They're supposed to enable self-service, scalability, fast start, optimized. And the following factors are kind of built into this. So you have one data management landing zone, and that one data management landing zone is here today at the top here. But that can then be connected to multiple data landing zones. And these data landing zones aren't about, oh, I'm just going to put data into a storage account. These are complete data landing zones which have analytics in, they have data applications, they have a way of consuming the data. And at the same time, we can have multiple ones of them. So why would you have multiple data landing zones? Well, it could be these factors. It could be the organizational structure and data ownership. So how is the organization organized from a business perspective, and how is data owned across the organization? It could be that you've got multi-regional deployments in which, how many regions are you going to have? Will you have a single, or will it span across multiple regions? Are there data residency requirements that are needed to take into account? Quotas. So consider that subscription quotas aren't necessarily capacity guarantees and are applied on a per region basis. Then data sovereignty. Due to kind of data sovereignty, I've just mentioned that, you might need another one. You might consider that you're going to have different Azure policies applied to this landing zone compared to this landing zone at the top here. So we're starting to see kind of a breakdown in different areas. So you can see these landing zones at the top here. At the same time, cost allocation, we appreciate you can obviously use resource groups within Azure to get that cost allocation, but you might actually want to separate it with a separate subscription to create a boundary for that cost application. And we're increasingly seeing with our customer base as well, the data classifications and highly confidential data, whereby our customers are considering putting highly confidential data into a separate landing zone a subscription and then doing just in time kind of access to that subscription. And then for a data mesh kind of deployment, we can consider this around our data domains, our latency, and our security. And Emerson and both Pete Hine and Espen will be going into that in the further session following this one. That's at a high level. But then what about our teams? We talked about how we need to have agility across our teams. And we've had to work with some of our customers to understand how that agility can come together. So adopting doesn't just do technology, but it also how do you operate. And the cloud scale analytics scenario also provides prescribed guidance to help you consider how to skill your organization. It's extremely important you engage your end users throughout the kind of modernization process as you continue to evolve the platform and onboard new use cases. With that in mind, I am going to try and just zoom in a little bit on these slides because I appreciate they are a bit small in certain areas. So let us start just down at the bottom here. You'll see, if I can get it into the right location. So you will see at the same time. No, it hasn't quite done it. You will see down here that we have our platform groups. So our platform group here is actually responsible for defining common policies for our data landing zone. So they sit here in our team. They operate kind of the actual infrastructure that everything runs on. They help provide new subscriptions. They operate the cloud platform all up. Then you have the data landing zone group, and the data landing zone group consists of kind of two teams. We have this data landing zone ops who have their architects, and they're responsible for delivering kind of the operating and maintaining of a data landing zone. And the next point up here is then really putting that cross-domain teams in, making sure that we have a business owner who is a product owner in here, and they're responsible for delivering new data applications, which in turn produce multiple data products such as insights, reports, workloads. They also partner with different parts of the business and understand that, okay, this data application here has a dependency on another data application, and we need to pivot from really thinking of this as a project and a waterfall project to then moving along to, okay, we're going to have this as a program of work, we're going to have this as a product, and we're going to have it as maintained. Also, these teams are responsible for furnishing metadata in the data management landing zone catalog as well. Now, what does this look like? Now, we've given you two high-level ones. It's like a bit like this. So when we break it down, and this is some of the work that we have done with other customers, and appreciate again, we'll just zoom in on this. So when we look at a data management landing zone, which this is, the types of things that we are seeing that are being built out there are kind of an operational console. So we're seeing op consoles, which are then creating kind of functionality behind them. It's kind of an illustration here of potential custom operation functions required for governance. But overall, Azure Purview, now known as Microsoft Purview, is really providing the data catalog and a lot of the governance functionality to the whole of the data landing zones. Equally, we think about kind of data quality in here, making sure that we have standard sets of rules that we can drive down, and data sharing contracts, and where does the master data and API catalog sit in there as well. A lot of this is kind of being built out as kind of custom applications. We have other customers who have built some of them out as power apps. I was with a customer a few weeks ago, and we managed to build out just a very, very simple data onboarding application. When we call data onboarding, that's registering a data asset. It's being able to then do maybe automated ingestion of that asset. And we managed to knock something up as a framework within like a couple of days. So it is all very possible, and that then interfaced into Purview. So it's a very simple way to go forward. But this is some of the things that you might want to consider in this space. And then we move on to what a data management landing zone looks like. It illustrates we've got different layers that are available here. So we have our core services layer, which is always built out, and that has our kind of data lake storage accounts. It has maybe a data agnostic ingestion engine. So how do I pull data from source, or how do I respond to data being placed into maybe a blob store, and then ingest that through to maybe my enriched layer. And then we want to enable that kind of agility for our teams as well. So we have these data applications, which are data products that we can then use tagging for. If we're looking at something called for mesh, or we're looking to be able to obviously see what applications belong to which particular business, we can then tag them as well. So in this case, we've got one of a product owner is John, and the domain is finance. Equally over this side, we have then a domain of support and a product owner of Sue. So, and you can have multiple of these data applications. But that gives you an oversight of where we're trying to go with the cloud scale analytics. The key for us is scalability every single time, the ability to add and to continually add without having to reset a number of the core services or to step back, so businesses can continue to go forward. They can develop their cloud model and they can develop their skilling model as they go forward. With that, what I'd like to try and do is hand over to Emerson Gattuccian, who wants to take through Microsoft is taking what we've got as the cloud scale analytics and working that into the Microsoft hybrid approach for data mesh and data fabric. Emerson.